the Medical Terminology Podcast. This episode is Chapter 5, Part 5, Review. Let's first review heart anatomy. What is the medical term for the heart? That's the myocardium. What is the term for the sac that surrounds the heart? That's the pericardium. What is the term for the large artery that takes oxygenated blood from the heart and sends it back to the rest of the body? Well, that's the aorta. And what is the term for the large vein that brings the deoxygenated blood back into the heart? Well, that's the vena cava, and we have two of them, the inferior vena cava and the superior vena cava. What is the term for the type of circulation that occurs between the heart and the lungs? That's the pulmonary circulation. And what is the term for the valve that separates the left atrium from the left ventricle? Well, that's the mitral valve. Okay, now looking at the pathologies, we've done that in two parts. We did the heart pathologies, and then we did the pathologies relating to blood vessels and the blood itself. And this is where it occurred to me there might be a little cause for confusion, so I'm going to review some things with you here. First of all, what is the term for an insufficient blood supply, specifically an insufficient supply of oxygenated blood? That's ischemia, ischemia. And the key idea I want to emphasize with ischemia is we're talking about a lack of flow of oxygen. The oxygen's in the blood, but the real problem with ischemia is it's a lack of oxygen. And we usually use this term pertaining to the heart and also pertaining to the brain. Now, there was another term that we talked about last time, and that was a term for insufficient flow of blood to a body part. Well, that's hypoperfusion. Hypoperfusion. And then we had the term for a sudden loss of oxygenated blood supply, and this lack of oxygen would cause tissue death. Well, that's the infarction. Infarction. And then we had a term that applied to a condition when the heart doesn't pump well, and that can cause a fluid buildup in places in the body. What is the term for that? Well, that is congestive heart failure. Sometimes it's just called heart failure, but precisely it's congestive heart failure. And then we had a term for a condition in which blood does not flow well to the vessels in the external parts of the body, say the arms, hands, legs, feet, or to some of the visceral organs. What is the term for that? Well, that's the peripheral vascular disease. We have two other terms that occurred to me that I really have not given you a clear explanation of the difference between them, and so I want to go over those with you. What is the term for excessive number of red blood cells? Well, I think you may have said one of two possibilities here. Some of you might have said erythrocytosis, erythrocytosis, and that is a general term for the excessive number of red blood cells, and that could be caused by a variety of problems. So that is sort of a general plain vanilla term. Now, some of you may have thought of polycythemia, polycythemia. That also means the excessive number of red blood cells, although the textbook indicates that that is caused by an overproduction by the bone marrow. There are too many blood cells in the blood because there are too many being made. Now, there are other conditions of erythrocytosis. You could have, for example, a situation where there's not as much fluid volume in the blood as would be normal. That can lead to an excessive number of red blood cells relative to the blood volume. So that would be an erythrocytosis, but it's not caused because too many blood cells are being made. It's caused because there's not enough general blood volume. So it's like the density of the blood cells has increased. So that's something to watch out for. Polycythemia really should be used when we're talking about an overproduction by the bone marrow. And erythrocytosis is that general term for excessive number of red blood cells. And then it occurred to me there are a couple of other terms from last time that I did not have you practice over, and they're important ones. What is the term for the good cholesterol? Well, that's the high density lipoprotein, or HDL cholesterol. Remember, the good stuff is high density. It's like a bowling ball. It's heavy. It sweeps through and carries the bad stuff away. Now, what is the term for the bad cholesterol? Well, that's the LDL, the low density lipoprotein. I hope this gives you a reminder that it's very important to keep reviewing terms over and over. As you're learning new ones, be sure to go back and review the old ones. This ends this episode of the Medical Terminology Podcast.